As of this recording, it's June 29th, and I've just gotten back from a week-long family event. I am in no way prepared for this video. It's time to go over the June reading wrap-up. Past monthly reviews, I have separated my books out in a star rating system and a did not finish system. This month, it just didn't come together for me because I was prepping to go to this family event and I had some other things going on. Really, I haven't read that much this month. I'm going to go through in chronological order. First is going to be Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. I started a Carissa Broadbent reading experiment at the end of May and it overflowed into the beginning of this June. So May, I read the Crowns of Nixia series, book 1 and 2, and June I started reading the War of Lost Hearts series. If we're comparing the books to each other, I think Daughter of No Worlds is significantly better than the Crowns of Nixia series. Some of the writing issues I had with Carissa Broadbent kind of pair well with the kind of story she's telling here, because one of her characters is kind of learning another language, so some of the stilted dialogue and weird synonym choices are kind of atmospheric instead of taking away from the story. Also, I just think that Tassan is a significantly more fleshed out character than Aurea, and I think her love interest, Mac, is better than Rain as well. So there's just a lot more personality. I had a lot more like mental visuals. Something I've noticed about Carissa Broadbent as a whole is that she tends to borrow different themes or plot devices from other popular successful authors and kind of weave them together into their own thing. Daughter of No Worlds is so much better than Nixia in so many ways, which is why this first book is sitting at 4 stars. I was definitely invested in Tassan's story. I was less interested in Max or Maximilian or whatever his name is there, and even less interested in some of the side periphery characters. I feel like maybe I was supposed to feel more invested in them. It was helping to bring me out of a reading slump, and it made me think like,
I might go through all of Carissa Broadbent's catalog, even outside of this video thing.
Unfortunately, that rolls me right into Children of the Fallen Gods, which is book 2 in the World of Lost Hearts, and I stopped reading this maybe 50 to 60% of the way through. This book is technically better than the Crowns of Nixia series. It takes more creative risks. The writing style was significantly more ambitious than Crowns of Nixia. I thought it was more interesting to read, and I thought it was doing something like more unique and inspiring than the first 2 novels in Nixia. However, this is a fantasy romance first and not a fantasy adventure story. Where this starts to fall apart for me is in the world building and the explanation of stuff. Like, Carissa Broadbent seems to want to make her stories very dark and morally gray and kind of make the characters and the reader wrestle with something, which I think is admirable, but it is not always effective when it comes to world building, because like she does some things that I think don't make sense and make me ask a lot of questions about how things work in the world around us magically or like device wise. It's specifically to create like,
oh, the characters are morally ambiguous. Who can I root for? Should I feel bad for liking this person?
Got to a point where I just didn't want to read it anymore because I felt like these elements were way out of pocket. And as it was in Crowns of Nixia, I really struggled with Aurea and Rain's romance in book 2. I was partially able to push through and keep reading that because it was only a 2-book series. So I knew like I was gonna get a conclusion at the end and be done. This is a 3-book series. I was less confused about why Tassan and Max were gonna get together even though I didn't feel any particular chemistry between them, and more confused about some of these larger world things, but it was just making me mad. So I just stopped reading it. I think if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it like a 2-star, maybe a 2.5-star review. Obviously it didn't work for me and it ruined the enjoyment I found in the first book, which was significant. I really loved Daughter of No Worlds and felt like very victorious, and like maybe I found a character I could really root for and who really kicked a lot of butt and was resilient and tough, determined and righteous, and all these like wonderful aspiration traits that usually I enjoy significantly. And I would still recommend this series for someone who's a big fan of fantasy romance, specifically epic fantasy romance. And if you're looking for like something else very similar to like books 2 and 3 in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, I think the War of the Lost Hearts could be a great take for you. It just wasn't for me, and it actually kind of like really slowed down my reading and made it hard for me to keep going this month with other books. Next is going to be The One by John Mars. This is going to be a 3-star read. I was impressed by John Mars as an author because it seemed like he had a larger idea and a couple of little novellas to do with that idea. And I think he did a great job like interweaving the stories and making each story play off the other and be interesting and dynamic enough that I was never upset when we went from another chapter and we went from hearing this person's story to this person's story, even though they don't directly link up as like a larger whole. Anyone who's not familiar, the one's basic premise is that we've developed some kind of technology that lets you find your soulmate through your DNA, and you do a DNA test and get matched to biologically your perfect life partner, which I think is like kind of fun and like a great escalation of the 23andMe DNA test we have nowadays. And I also think it's like a kind of fun way to like push the envelope on dating apps in general. All kinds of interesting questions and things you can do with that. And John Mars like comes up with a couple unique things that maybe people wouldn't have thought of to start with. I had this on a TBR last year for science fiction. Didn't get to it before it came off Kindle Unlimited, so when I saw that had come on Kindle Unlimited again, I downloaded it and started reading it right away. Because this was so different from Carissa Broadbent's writing and stuff, I was really into it while I was reading, and then I got to the end of it and I was kind of like, which is why it's sitting here at 3 stars, because I enjoyed my time with it. I thought that John Mars was really clever in what he wrote and how he wrote it. There are several elements that are cliche within it, and there are several elements that stretch a reader's suspension of disbelief in it, but I think that because it keeps flipping between the different stories between chapters, and because the story is pretty fast-paced, it doesn't give you really enough time to think about it too long, as long as you read it in like 2 or 3 sittings. There's a TV show based off of this book. I haven't seen the TV show, but based off of how the book is set up, like telling individual couple stories, I can definitely see how this would make for great episodic TV, like in a little capsule of a larger world. Next is going to be Not My MC by Rory Miles. This is a continuation of the Omega Love series I started back in January. I really liked the first 2 books. The first one was probably like a 3-star fine. The second one somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4-star. I just found the character more compelling. Like we really amped up the drama and sense of stakes going on. And this Not My MC kind of like lowered them down. So it's sitting kind of like at a 2-star. I was really excited for the potential I saw in the summary of this story. I felt like there's a significant chance that we would have stakes or drama or an extra plot. And this like Omega Love series is kind of all centered around how Omegas and Alpha kind of like find each other, and there's just Lady in Power who kind of sucks. We get rid of her in the first book, but the second book and the third book are going on simultaneously, so we're still dealing with this lady who kind of sucks and is mean to people. By the time we're here in the third book, it is tired. Like I already seen this, you know? I wanted to see this other chick who took over the role kind of step into it and change things and see what kind of new problems arise. Also, MC is short for Motorcycle Club, which I'm only kind of on. I really like it in the Sweetsverse Omegaverse by Catherine Moon and Lana Cole. And I was kind of excited about this one based off of my experience over there. But like a Motorcycle Club is supposed to be kind of like a crime syndicate, like Robin Hood kind of thing going on potentially. And we're not really getting any of that. Felt like all of it was miscommunication, blown out of proportion, like dealing with each other's emotions. And I like to deal with each other's emotions, but I don't like it to be over a misunderstanding. I like something to have actually happened. After Not My MC, I was in a crazy reading slump and I was trying to get out of it, so I went over to reading The Bully Switch by Mercedes Jade. I had picked this out partially because it was novella length, and I'm a big fan of Mercedes Jade's Hidden Dragon Omegaverse series, which has a why choose element and a bully romance element. I kind of like the why choose, I kind of like the bully romance. I love the dragons, which I knew I wasn't going to get here in Bully Switch, but I thought maybe like the why choose and the bully elements and the tension between like the girl fighting back and the boys kind of taunting her and it not being like super malicious was sort of like be a fun dynamic and be just enough drama and fluff to kind of like get me back into reading. It didn't work out that way with Bully Switch. First of all, I think what was going on was kind of like too mean and had a weird twins element that I didn't care for. Also, the rationale between why the boys were bullying the girl who switched with her twin so that she could get revenge for her twin's sake, their reasoning was not good and was very rushed. So that made me not really side with them or feel like it was a miscommunication. It kind of made me feel like they were stupid and like maybe I didn't want this girl to get together with them. So this one's also kind of sitting at 2 stars, unfortunately. I've definitely read worse books and given them better ratings in the past. I think just combined with what I know Mercedes Jade can do, with what what this actually delivered and with like my significant need to get out of a reading slump and the fact that this just made it worse. It just all kind of came together to not work for me. Next is gonna be The Omega Merger by Roxy Collins. I was really hitting these romances hard here in June, trying to like pull myself out of the slump or get into some new books. This one's also like 2 stars. It's incredibly long, and I feel like it had a lot of potential, some good stakes, some good tension, and they just kind of like dropped the ball on it and stretched out the tension and the will they won't they to be like, we all have to sit down and have a conversation, and they just dragged out how long it took them to all sit down and have a conversation, even though all of them were pretty much on the same page from the jump. I felt like it could have been an interesting Omegaverse story because it's about someone like becoming an Omega late in life and not really fully becoming one, but being able to switch back and forth between being a beta and Omega, and her job specifically relies on her ability to be a beta and not react to like alphas. So I thought there was going to be quite a bit at stake and some tension and maybe like some conflict between her and her boss and some conflict between the business merger thing she was doing. You know, just a lot of things for her to work out and negotiate, very high tension. And instead of doing that, we had like a journey about her having hangups about alphas in general and like her having hangups about being an Omega or not being an Omega. I don't know, it just wasn't what I was promised. And then last is going to be Lore by Alexandra Braken. This is a book that's been on my TBR for a while. I really love contemporary fantasy, urban fantasy, especially ones that involve Greek gods. I know it's got like mixed reviews on BookTube, but when it came up on Kindle Unlimited, I just had to give it a try. I am about 90% done with it, and I probably will finish it after I'm done filming, but I already know it's probably going to be like a 4-star read. It's not a perfect book. I think it goes on a little bit too long. I can see why other people sometimes find it frustrating, and I do think that Alexandra Braken is trying really hard to make Lore this like noir, rough, kick-ass, like don't really care kind of lady, and not like 100% succeeding at that. I love Greek gods, modernized myth situation. I adore that we're not doing a Hades and Persephone retelling. I'm so tired of Hades and Persephone being the thing. I think the interactions between the different gods is really interesting. I think the presentation of like this battle that happens among the gods and people every 7 years is really cool. I love how we've got like some authentic New York places here and some New York information. I love how we took like some of the symbols and statues that are in New York and gave them like potentially a Greek twist. Overall, I do like Lore as a character. I like her love interest just fine too, and like her 2 sidekick characters. I'm excited to get to the ending. I'm like close to the climax now. We're going into what looks like it might really for realsies this time be the final battle. I do think this book is a little bit long. Like we could have done this in less pages, and I saw a lot of the twists coming. Even with all of that said, I've had a pretty good time reading it and I am interested in finishing it. That is everything I read this month in June. Between like the reading slump and all this other busy work I've been doing in June, I just haven't had a lot of time to read. I think it was an okay month. I found a couple ones that I really like. But what about you? What was your favorite read this month? Tell me in those comments down below. And let me know if any one of these books struck your interest and is something you're gonna try. And as always, keep reading. Bye!